Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I wanted to focus today's video on board games because I think they're so important to play with your kids or students, but they're oftentimes overlooked. And I think part of the reason they're overlooked is because some kids have a tough time if they lose, and we don't really want to have to deal with that. And I think another part of it is because it requires focus and attention from everyone playing. I'll go over some basic skills that board games target, a lot of which you might not even realize. Then I'll share some of my favorite games to play with my students and where you can get them. So one of the major skills that board games help develop is the ability to scan. So scanning is visually looking for an item. So just say on Zingo, if you need to find the star, the student needs to visually look at each item until they find the star. This is an important skill that kids need for locating items, whether it's finding a certain toy, then when they get older, whether it's finding an item in a grocery store aisle, or finding a word in a text. So scanning is definitely a skill that board games target that I think is really important. Another skill that board games help focus on is turn taking, which is really important for my students, especially between ages 3 and 5, because if they haven't been in school before, they might not really know how to take turns with someone who isn't a parent or a sibling. Another thing that board games focus on is following rules and explaining the rules to others, which is a skill that some kids are still developing. Another skill is winning and losing, which some kids, are totally fine whether they win or lose, and some kids have a tantrum when they lose. So we have to work through that. Another skill that they focus on is the ability to focus on one activity until completion, which I think is tough for a lot of kids, especially if they spend a lot of time watching TV or on phones or some sort of electronics, because things happen so fast, so they don't need to really attend to anything longer than a few seconds. So the ability to attend to something until it's over is definitely something that needs to be focused on. Another important skill that board games help build is language and communication. So from simple as prepositions, so put the piece in, put the piece on, things like that. Object identification, so just identifying what something is, whether it's naming it expressively or finding it receptively. Following one-step directions, so just move your piece to this spot, things like that. Overall language exposure and expansion. So just think about all the words that you are saying when you're playing a board game without even thinking about it. And answering questions. What piece do you still need? Things like that. It works on cognitive skills. So identifying colors, numbers, counting, without kids even realizing that they're practicing those things. You can adapt games to meet your kids' needs and their age. And I'll probably do another video showing how to adapt games. Another skill that board games focus on is fine motor skills. So the little movements. So things like push the piece in, picking up small objects. There are things that a lot of kids struggle with. So one of my favorite games to play with kids, whether they're 3, 4, or 5, whatever their needs are, is Zingo. So I like to store my games in these little bags because it drives me crazy to have the huge boxes that just take up so much space for only the game to be in. So for those of you that don't know, Zingo is like bingo, but pictures. So there's green sides, red sides, and then the goal is to take out a picture, and then the child tries to match it to the board. So you're asking them, do you have this? So then they are scanning, asking questions. They don't have it, they put it back in. There's a fine motor skill. Then they have to let someone else have a turn. So waiting, things like that. So Zingo is one of my favorites. I'll link it below. You can get on Amazon, or Target is a great place to find games. A lot of times I also find games from thrift stores or Facebook Marketplace, because a lot of people get rid of them when there's still so much life left in them. So another game that I like to play with kids is called Sneaky Snacky Squirrel. And I think this is such a cute game. So we have this little squirrel who works like tweezers. So there we are working on those fine motor skills to have to pick up the acorns. You have to match the colors to the colors in the log. And you have this spinner. So I'll adapt games a lot of times for my students. So if I know that we're still working on winning and losing and I don't want to focus on that quite yet, I may skip this one where you can steal from someone else. May just completely cover that piece or have them spin again. One way to adapt games. Another game that I really like is Gumball Grab. So Gumball Grab is a Lakeshore game. I usually don't buy a ton of games from Lakeshore just because they tend to be more expensive, but this one is really worth it, and I've had this for years and it's still, you know, strong after lots of kids using it. So with this one, you pick your gumball machine, you have different colored gumballs, you put the gumballs into this part, you put the cards in here, kids will pick a card, and then I'll tell them what gumballs to get. I adapt to this one by skipping some of the cards. Some of them say things like lose 2 gumballs. Sometimes I don't want to focus on that with kids yet. I want to just focus more on the turn taking, color identification, attending to an activity, in which case we'll kind of skip those and just do the cards I tell you to take. But it still works on winning and losing, scanning, color ID, all of those other skills. The last game that I really like for those beginning to play games is Pop-Up Pirate. And I'm sure you've seen this one around. It's classic. So the pirate goes in, then you have to put the swords in, and the goal is to make the pirate pop. A lot of kids like this one because it's a cause and effect game, so it holds their attention, and the game moves really fast. It could be over in a minute or 2, or it could last a little bit longer. And you're still working on all those language skills, the fine motor skills, cognitive skills, turn taking, all of that. So these were just some of my favorite games. I'll link them below. Let me know if there's any that you really enjoy that I can try. So if you don't mind, put them in the comments. You can email me, message me on Instagram or Facebook. And again, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you again soon.